Hi everyone, this is Elena and welcome to another card video. In this video, we'll show you how to make these two cards using the Concord 9 Dahlia Turnabout stamp set along with the coordinating dies. So for one of them, I'll use the dies, for other one not. As well, I'll be using a wood mount stamp. From here out, have a joyful Thanksgiving. And I'll use two sets of creative corner. Each set has two of the corners with the magnets, so they're nicely stacked together because of the magnets. So I'll use that and the MISTI without the mouse pad to stamp that sentiment, along with some Catherine Puller Designs ink pads, the new SPA collection. So let's get started. Here I have my grid that's already marked for the Turnabout stamp. And my Turnabout stamp is already marked with the lines for positioning. So next I position the Neenah white cardstock onto my grid in the middle where I want to stamp that Dahlia. So I'm starting with Sauna ink. This is one of, as I said, one of the new Catherine Puller designs. So I'm stamping twice to get more saturated and a little bit darker look. Next, I'm wiping my stamp and I'm going with the second ink. I'm using the green tea ink. And I'll stamp that. Clean my stamp. Turn around my cardstock and stamp with Daydream ink. So I'm stamping it twice to get deeper and more saturated color. So I'm again cleaning my stamp. And I'll turn it one more time. Apply the anti-static powder tool and I'm using some Versamark ink to stamp the fourth layer, kind of the fourth rotation of the cardstock. So I'm stamping it twice to have pretty good coverage when I'm applying the embossing powder. So I'm applying some Hero Arts copper embossing powder, just making sure that all the parts are covered, and using a little paintbrush I'm removing the excess where it's stuck to where it should not have, mostly on the Daydream petals of the Dahlia. So I'm just going over it again and applying a couple times. I kind of removed the embossing powder where it should stay, so I reapplied it. So next what I'll do, I'll just heat set this using the Wagner embossing tool. I apologize, here you see my hand, not the embossing, and I'll just trim my panel down to 3 3/4 by 5, even though it was centered, so that allowed me to cut even on both sides. So next I'm removing that mouse pad from my MISTI, and I'm positioning the creative corners, the stacked creative corners, and then I have little imaging sheet. And I secure that with a magnet onto the bottom of the MISTI, the base of the MISTI. Next, I'm putting my cardstock, the panel in the MISTI, along with the sentiment. And I'm using a magnet to secure that. Then I'm kind of positioning that corner, all those corners, 4 stacked corners, that will use, I'll use that as a guide to stamp my sentiment. So I stamp it with Versamark and I'll emboss it. I'll apply some copper embossing powder and just heat set it. So I realized there I need a little bit more, so I'm adding a little bit more, and then I'm quickly melting that with my heat tool. So there's the finished panel. Next I'm taking some retired brown sugar, I think. This was in color from Stampin' Up! A few years ago, but it kind of went nicely with that copper embossing. So I'm applying some fun foam on the back and adhering it onto my card front, and I'm using the Tombow Extreme adhesive. So here's my first card is done, and then we'll do something similar for my second card. So I'll change the colors a little bit. Instead of Daydream, I'll use Aquatini. So I'll be using Sauna, Aquatini, and green tea. So I'm positioning my panel here again, and I'll start stamping. I'm first going with the Sauna ink. I'm turning it to the left, and I'll stamp with, before I stamp actually, I'll clean my stamp, and I'm stamping with Aquatini. Turn it again, clean my stamp, and stamp with green tea. So I'm stamping here twice with the green tea to have a little bit deeper and more in a little bit better coverage. So there we have that. So next you will see in the background I have the lines that go across. So I'll extend those lines onto my cardstock very gently, well, very kind of lightly with a pencil, and then do the opposite direction, and kind of making sure that in the center I have that cross so I can position the die. So I'm just positioning it to see where it lines up. So it lines up here with the green layer. Well, I lined it up with the green layer. It lines up with all 4 layers. So I'm finding that empty areas that the 4th layer should go, and I'm kind of matching with my stamp on the lid of the MISTI. Next I'm securing it with some microsport tape, and I'll just die cut it through my Go Cut and Emboss machine. Here I put the wrong plate. Instead of the C plate I put 2B plates. So I'm removing the die, and you will see this nice effect where the little petals were die cut. So next I'm using some eraser to erase the pencil marks, trying to see which backgrounds I should use, and I discovered that the baked brown sugar looks the best. So I'm again going back in my MISTI, and I'll stamp the sentiment using the Creative Corners and this imaging sheet. It's basically for quilting. So they were big sheets, 8 by 10 or 10.5, so I just trimmed it down to a smaller size so I can use it for positioning or any other needs I need when it comes to stamping. So next I'm using Versamark. I stamped that, and I'll apply again the copper embossing powder and then just heat set it. So I'm applying that. Next I'll go with my heat tool, and I'll melt that embossing powder. So we're almost done here. So that looks pretty nice. But before we moved, I need to move forward with the card. I need to trim the ends. I'm trimming it again down to 3 3/4 by 5, and I have this top folding note card that I created with the big brown sugar cardstock. And next I'll use some foam adhesive to apply on the back. I can do this time fan foam because we have the die cut petals there, and it will kind of cover the brown underneath the holes. I'm just applying little pieces here and there to have nice coverage. So let's remove the backing. Very quickly here I have it sped up so you're not bored of me removing all the tape pieces and then adhering it to my card base. And with this we have both cards finished. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well to visit my blog and subscribe to it. And I'll see you soon in another card video. Bye!